Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our third panel, which is about will. Sorry, just checking my internet. Yes. So, good evening, everybody. We are live, and to our third panel of the day of Utsavam's Day 1. Utsavam is a festival run by Dakshina Chitra every year. It's a festival of music and dance, and every year it has a different theme. This year, the theme is really looking at resilience, right? Resilience in the arts, and how do you build resilience? And one of the main, is this better? Remove the headphones. All right, just getting some technical feedback here, but so we're just going to come back. I'm very sorry for the technical inconsistencies. Okay, so we're back here. The panel is called Will Money Solve the Problem? And we are going to just jump right into it. But before that, I'd like to specifically thank and acknowledge Goethe Institute for partnering with us for this specific session. And I'd like to bring on Ms. Katharina, who is the current director in Chennai at the Goethe Institute, Chennai. So, Katharina.
Hello, thank you so much.
Thank you for collaborating with us, Katharina, and we'd just love to hear a little bit from you before we jump into the panel.
Of course, it's actually my pleasure to collaborate. I wanted to say thanks to Dakshina, Chitra, and especially to you for asking the Goethe Institute to be part of this. I think it's going to be a little bit tough that we are the third panel. I've already done the first two, and there were so many inspiring thoughts and panelists that it's going to be a challenge to live up to that, but I'm sure we can do it. And I think the topic of will money solve the problem, or do we need new ways to think about money and earning money in the arts, is going to make people stay awake. I'm sure of it. And I would like to use the occasion to especially thank the two German panelists, also the others, especially since I just learned that one got up at 5 in the morning. So thank you for that and respect. Judith Holofernes is actually a musician, singer, songwriter whose music I personally greatly admire. So I'm really interested to hear more about it, especially since she's done the daring step of kind of leaving the pop world behind to start a more intimate relationship with her admirers. So I think that's going to be very interesting. And I'm also very grateful that Bernd Fesel agreed to join, who comes actually from the creative industries. So he has a bit of a different perspective, and just in the panel before, we learned that we can only get to solutions if we start leaving the bubble and have multi-perspectives when it comes to art. So I'm glad we already did this step here. So thank you so much to the two of them from the Goethe Institute side. Thanks to the entire team. And I'm really, really interested to see how the German perspective matches or intermingles with the Indian side. So thanks to all of you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Katharina. And welcome to Chennai. I know you came into Chennai during lockdown. We haven't really seen much of you, but I do hope that you can come out soon and see the rest of Chennai. Though we are still open, we are sort of not open. You know how it is, right? But thank you again. And so let's jump in straight. I want to quickly bring on all the panelists and quickly just introduce them. How this is going to really be is that we're going to have a conversation, Shreya questions, one-on-one or with everybody, and then we're going to jump into a very interesting segment towards the end of our session. I'm just going to make some broad statements, ask some broad statements to the artists, and they're going to either agree or disagree. So this is what we're up for, and I think I'm getting some feedback, but I'm sure Ashik, who's our person, is on that. I want to quickly introduce Fesel, just like Ms. Katharina said. He's the director of the European Creative Business Network. So welcome. Thank you for joining us from Germany. And then we have Judith Holofernes, who's a German singer, guitarist, songwriter, and author, just like Katharina just mentioned. Noel Kirthiraj, and co-founder of Maja, the hottest name that's on everybody's lips in South India right now, especially the Tamil indie music scene. And then we have Ratheesh Krishnan, the head of experiments and new ventures in India. So all of you, welcome. I just want to make sure Everybody can hear me okay before we, can you give me a thumbs up? Can you hear me okay? You might be on mute. Judith, I think you might be on mute. Can you all hear me? Is this all okay?
No. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we can.
Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yes, it's a little bit quieter since everybody joined in.
All right, cool.
Okay.
So let's just jump in, okay? I want to quickly, Noel, can you hear me before we start? Okay, I think Noel's just going to maybe rejoin the call. But let's maybe start with a little bit of big picture. Bernard, I want to ask you a little bit about the actual work that you do, right, with the European Creative Business Network, which is the ECBN. How does the ECBN really look at revenue generating models for artists, independent or non-independent? What are the kind of things that you do to help sort of build business models? Can you hear me, Bernard?
Yeah, thank you. Now I got your message. Thanks for your question and great to have me here. Thank you so much. ECBN is a network of...
Are we all okay?
I can hear an ambient noise, but I'm not sure if that's from somewhere.
Maybe just mute yourself, Max. Well, let's see if that helps. I'm very sorry, everybody, but this is 2021 for you.
So now I think it's better. Yeah, so ECBN is a network of organizations across Europe, some 150 in 30 nations. And those institutions and organizations are directly supporting artists, but also companies, dissemination, so the full range of what you call cultural and creative sectors, from the painter to Bertelsmann, so to speak. And so our work as ECBN is a direct one. We are indirect one. We are working on framing the situation, framing the policies, framing the budgets. And we also try to invent policies and propose budgets which fit better to the needs of the creators and the artists.
Mm. So I just want to quickly jump in and talk about a series of funding that the German government rolled out early in the pandemic. It was really looked up as a big model of a country that put the creative sector and gave it the importance, because not many governments even gave the creative sector certain funding. So I wanted to know, and it was a pretty large amount for artists who have not earned a certain level of revenue the earlier year. So how did that pan out, and what was your general feedback?
The general feedback was that the funds were demanded highly, so that there had been, increased, and there were intermediates, like, for example, the Association of Theaters, or like a music council, where are the intermediates where the stakeholders could apply. And the funds were not only to help artists as a single entrepreneur, but also the stages, the clubs, the theaters. At the beginning, this funding was mostly addressed to the public-owned and financed theaters and opera houses. But then it was opened also to the publicly funded theaters. And in the end, there was even a way to fund artists directly with their income by giving them residency funding, so to speak, where they can apply for, because this could not be paid from the economic ministry in Germany. Yeah, there was a debate how really to support the artist, because he has this two sides of his work, the economic entrepreneur. So is it funding from the economic ministry, or is it from the cultural ministry? But this was solved in time. Yeah, and now I think it's the third round where the budgets are being run through.
All right, absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense. And so you think, are you still in lockdown in Germany?
Oh yes, unfortunately we are just increasing another lockdown because of the mutations, and our policymakers are debating on a daily and weekly basis where to lock and where to unlock.
Absolutely. That's very interesting. I want to bring in Rats here, Ratheesh, to talk a little bit about funding and sources of funding in India that happened during, like, similar, like, so Germany, what they had, obviously India did not have. But artists found very smart ways of generating revenue by building audience, building their digital presence. And of course, the private sector, I think in India, really fundraised for the creative sector specifically, right? And I just wanted to know from your standpoint, because you take on new ventures, you have artists who are very vulnerable who come up to you and ask you for advice, especially in times when they need the guidance and strategic plan, because we don't necessarily have the kind of support that Germany has, right? Because Germany is a very well-funded country to begin with. So what are your thoughts there? Just to get the Indian perspective.
The realistic perspective of how I think the creative sector, especially people in arts and culture, responded to the pandemic was not truly resilience, because we're talking about resilience today. They always were in a state of flux. They were artists as a sector or culture as a sector, especially in India, and I can speak for South of India much more deeper, that they don't think they're entrepreneurs in the first place. And because they don't think they're entrepreneurs in the first place, they've always looked at as people who need support, right from audience to the craft. In IT, we call it product development, but in art, it's actually called growing the craft. And for all of this thing, they need support. So when the pandemic happened, we are technically celebrating our first year anniversary of the lockdown. Same time last year is when historically we were in a lockdown. I think the first thing that they experienced was resistance, huge resistance. I don't think they were willing to grow up. And I speak for the artists themselves because they always had support, So for them, this was the first time they had to stand up and say, we will stand for each other. And we will ask for support in order for us to be resilient. So they spoke to a lot of private organizations. Some private organizations came in and helped their CSR network or their first circle of friends or their first inner circle. But a lot of organizations like yourself, who is into arts management and arts consulting, they actually told people to grow through what they are going through. And I think that advice came at the right time. So they started thinking about revenue as a business model and not revenue as honorarium or remuneration. And I think that perspective was very, very important. And COVID, a virus had to come, which is in its micro units, to actually teach us this lesson to an entire industry. The second thing in the India perspective that also happened is people started saying no to a lot of things. They started understanding that no matter what, they have to put food on their plate, and no matter what, they have to stand up for the craft and lead by example. So a lot of them started saying no and started seeing how they can put food on their plate. And I think the respect for their art form by them putting food on the plate and them therefore leading by example was actually a tall promise to keep up. And I think less than 5% of the industry actually was resilient and still stands strong.
That is something so fascinating that you just said, and I know we discussed this earlier, is that artists don't necessarily think of themselves as entrepreneurs, or they're not entrepreneurs, right? And I think perhaps, Bernd, you have this notion too, right? Is that artists think like artists. They think creatively, not necessarily entrepreneurially, right? In terms of how they're generating their money, what is the sustainable model, etc. Are we expecting too much from artists to be able to sort of think of that laterally, think of money laterally, rather than just say, hey, it's not enough if you just practice your art or craft, you have to be doing all of this. Do you both think it's too much to ask for the artists, or do you think artists should be entrepreneurial?
Well, if you're asking me, it's really a coin with two sides. Every artist, just as any other person who is producing anything and selling it, is somehow entrepreneurial. But the motivation is a different one. Many companies are started to make money, but artists, theater people, writers are mostly starting their activity to do good art, not to do big business. So if big business comes on top, fine, but first it's about quality. And then in the Corona crisis, it became obvious that for the Ministry of Economics, artists were no entrepreneurs and needed no funding. For the Ministry of Culture, they said, well, we are caring about the artistic quality. We don't need to help them to make a daily living. And suddenly they were in between those two debates. And it took here in Germany a long debate, well, maybe it was only a short one, of about 4 to 5 months to get it recognized that artists need to be funded also as single entrepreneurs, needed help. Though they would not say, hey, I'm a great company, and they would usually never go to the Ministry of Economics because, internally motivated, they would relate to the Ministry of Culture. So this debate was really, I think, an eye-opener for everybody, that it's not an either or, right. And that also the Ministry of Economics has to learn the language of the artists. You speak to an artist differently than you do, to somebody producing tires. And that's, so I would say that's an expectation we have also as a sector towards the Ministry of Economics. And to be fair, this expectation has been there for 10 years. When the topic creative industry started in Germany, it was new to the Ministry of Economics. This term creative industries in Germany is really new. It's just 10 years old. So on the one hand, we can also understand that the ministry is kind of wary and surprised and not used to it. But after 10 years, I think we can expect more. And that's the good thing of this crisis and this really deadly situation for so many people. On this level, there has been a greater understanding now in ministries and a greater cooperation than before between the Ministry of Economics and Culture.
Rath, do you have any response to that question as well?
I think India needs to grow up. I don't think we have, as a government, as an economy, started respecting artists as a career itself. And it starts at home. Our ex-People's President, Dr. Abdul Kalam, used to say that, saying it is your job to actually rise up so that others can rise up in your regard. So I think it is the moral responsibility of artists to actually rise up and lead by example. And there are great examples that's actually happening. In fact, Noel is a great example, and he's leading the path of resilience right now. And there are many artists looking at the kind of work Maja is doing right now and saying, wow, now there's an example that I can actually learn from. And that learning is what is going to give you the earning. The more you learn, the more you earn. That's how artists become great artists. They learn their craft, right? So running a business is just another learning so that you can earn and you can support more artists and create jobs. For me, entrepreneurship is about job creation. And I think artists have a moral responsibility to create more jobs for others in the same industry. Only then all of us will grow together.
But I know, because a lot of artists come to you, Rath, and that's why I want to kind of revisit that point a little bit. Do you think artists are able to learn that lateral skill of thinking about money, right? Because we think it's very easy to say, okay, I have lunch at 4 o'clock, so I need to leave home by 3 o'clock. That's easy to think of. But to think of the idea of compounding, investment, diversification of portfolio, do you think it's possible because I know there'll be, in a pot, right? There'll be good artists who are able to do that, and there'll be artists who struggle. So I'm trying to figure out, what do you think, which percentage of the artists I think are able to actually do that and run?
So I have a textbook answer for that, and sometimes maybe some of the panelists may not agree for that. It actually came from this movie Karate Kid. In fact, the second version also had the same lesson. There are no bad students. There are only bad teachers. So I know artists have the need, and I also see that on a daily basis, because I have different types of people coming to me and asking me the same type of questions. So there are great students. I think there are no great teachers. There aren't people picking this up and saying, I will teach artists how to make money. And great artists deserve to be rich. There is no reason why they don't deserve to be rich. So that's the only mindset artists need to have. That's all.
Yeah. I want to take your prompt and just feed in, in Germany at the artistic university, at the arts university, design or film university, the business education is really a very, very small part, or it's none at all. Yeah. So they learn the artistic and the aesthetic education, but this entrepreneurial education, really rare. So they get out there and have really difficulties. They want to run a business, but they didn't even have a business teacher. Yeah.
I actually agree to what he's saying. There are so many accelerators and incubators in India for the startup ecosystem, for the SaaS industry, for biotechnology, for artificial intelligence. We need an accelerator for artists so that we can do holistic development of their business dreams, and they create more jobs in the industry.
Rats, that's what we do at SNS, just FYI. So I guess that's the point of me moderating this conversation also. So great, I think they were fantastic takeaways. I want to jump in here and bring both Judith and Noel here, if we could, and really talk about what Rats and Bernard just talked about, right? Is really looking at how do artists actually be entrepreneurs, right? And I know, Judith, you have a very interesting career where you were part of a very well-known band, and about maybe 7-8 years ago, or maybe a little bit more, 2011, I think you branched out and became a solo artist. And maybe 8-10 years later, that's actually worked even better for you, right? And I want to sort of revisit that story a little bit on how did you sort of make that decision to leave and become a solo artist? And Noel, for you, as a parallel question again, is looking at as artists, as entrepreneurs, right? And that's what you're trying to do with Maja, and really what is the vision and the purpose of Maja. So that's because I'm looking at her as an example of an artist who did that, and you as an institution who's trying to do that for artists like Judith times 100x, right? So yeah, Judith, do you want to go first?
Well, actually, I didn't leave my band because I set out to be a solo artist. I was just really burnt out. And I'd been doing that thing for 12 years, and we'd been really successful, and it had been a great ride. It was so much fun, but it was not a sustainable life. And I'd had 2 kids with my drummer, which of course is my bad, right? So we'd been touring with 2 kids on the tour bus for 5 years. And I was just really, really burnt out. So for the second part of my career, my focus was building a sustainable life, basically, a sustainable career, sustainable life, which actually meant dialing down the success part. So that's not quite true. I went very indie, and I did sell less and less records, but it was kind of on purpose. Because I was focusing on making a life that was more suitable to a grown-up, real person's life,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I tried a lot of different things. First I had my own record company, which was a step towards more independence, but it kind of wasn't enough. It didn't feel. I still felt I was playing the old game. I just had less money, and that wasn't any fun. So, and I'd always been unhappy with, and I think this is really important, with the focus of success, or for success, is always to reach as many people as you can. But if you step back for a moment, you notice that a lot of people can kind of like your posts and like what you do, but never spend any money on you. And never have a real, meaningful, deep relationship. And I'd always been really unhappy with that. I was like, no, I want to take care of the people I already have. I want to take care of the relationships. I want to be, I want to go deep, not wide.
Yeah.
That's why I joined Patreon. So I joined Patreon in 2019. November. And so I was really lucky because I did that before Corona hit. So Yeah, it wasn't, I mean, it wasn't that smart. It was just what I wanted to do, but it was really, I was really lucky. Yeah. And the thing is that what I've noticed, and that's what Rath said, I think, is that the crisis of Corona has made a lot of artists question their life models. I wouldn't even say business models, but a lot of artists come to me for advice now. And a lot of the press has been really interested in the whole thing because everybody's kind of noticing how fragile the artist's business model is. And everybody's like, we have to do something about it. So, and I think that part's really hopeful. There's wonderful things happening. Everybody's rethinking the whole thing.
Absolutely. And I want to come back to you in a second as to how, I know you had some smart solutions that you did, and I will come back to you, Judith, just for that. Noel, I want to bring you in here, is looking at Marja as a tech platform, and what you're trying to do for indie artists is absolutely fantastic, right? You are trying to be the change that is going to shake the market, but also help artists build revenue, hopefully, from it. So what is your model?
So fundamentally, I think a lot of the talk about artists being essentially entrepreneurs, artists being sort of self-sustaining companies. We look at it the same way. We look at an artist as a company, and what do the artists need in order for them to go find their product fit, go find the market fit, and then scale, right? But just like any other company, before you could do anything, you would need to have your product and make sure it's working. So our model is, how do we nurture an artist through that journey? Because it doesn't happen overnight. So when an artist, is set out to do music, we ask the question, what is your sound? What is essentially, i.e. the product that you're bringing to market, right? And then is there validation for that sound? Is there an audience? So that becomes the market. Now, let's see if there's, one person who's willing to listen to you. There's 100, 1,000, 1 million, whatever it is. So at that point, just like a startup would find product market fit, an artist would have found, their sound and their core audience, right? Now it becomes easy to go out and find ways to monetize that quote unquote product of yours and scale it to take it different in the market. So Marja basically, it looks at artists as a brand that's trying to discover themselves and on this journey to scale. And then we just simply become the part of the journey, part of the ecosystem for that particular artist. So our business model is very simple. I always think of artists as the CEO of their brand. And just like any other company, it's not a solo game. You need a team around you because, as touched on earlier, you even asked the question, is it even fair to ask the artist to, not just make good music, good content, but also worry about business and so on? And it's not, because how many successful companies have you seen where a single entrepreneur has, gone on to become successful doing everything? So what that means is, just like that, an artist from our eyes require a team. So we look at Marja as essentially the leadership team for this artist, right? And through us, our extension, the ecosystem, you're rounding up what an artist needs to be successful. So our business model is, we facilitate these interactions in an optimum way. We help artists find their sound faster, hopefully. We help them find audience and a lot of them quicker, and enable them to become successful, right? And in the process, fundamentally, just like an entrepreneur or company would hold on to the IP, we believe the artist should hold on to the IP, 100% of the rights. And just like any other service provider would, when we generate revenue for the artist, we would take a fee, right? It's very straightforward model. And we believe if done right, this is a sustainable model across, thousands and millions of artists. So that's what Maja is about.
That is very interesting, because I think the model is based on how much interest an artist gets in order for you as Maja to be successful and for the artist to be successful. And so looking at the latest, example of the latest song that you just released, right, Enjoy and Jammy, which I know I want to steal this example from you, Noel, how you said the dropped a title track, dropped a track a day before Enjoy and Jammy, and that stands at like 20 million views, and Enjoy and Jammy, I don't know, like 60 million views plus. So that is a different beast all on itself, right? Because it's at a global level. And it's almost like, I don't know if you can control it, right? It's there. And if you're able to generate that level of interest, I totally see your model working. But I think it's interesting to see how it'll probably evolve, to see how much interest you can generate to yourself, that you can in fact then identify where the revenue platforms or streams are, right?
So, I mean, just like, again, I'm drawing a lot of parallels to building companies, because I'm hoping that people are able to resonate and kind of see the connection. So just like anyone trying to build a company, there's no one definition of success. And there are amazing companies that end up being very regional focused and go on to be successful, right? And there are some companies become national companies, some become global companies. Yeah. So it's super important. And this is the problem, actually. I see it in India, where it's become a numbers game. People care, or like made to think too much about how many views do I have and this and that, which is actually a disservice to the artist, right? Because as you pointed out, then you create this mindset, unless I get, millions and millions of views, maybe I'm doing something wrong, which is not at all true. So it's super important to recognize that, one, don't worry about what others are doing, because as an artist, everyone is unique. Second thing is, to your point about monetization, revenue generation, right? Streams is just simply one avenue. So again, from Maja perspective, we look at it from a 360 angle. And if you take these steps, though, to perfect your craft, as Rats put earlier, and you're able to, put out content, then you're going to end up with a catalog that's going to allow you to now tour all of a sudden. I mean, obviously it's COVID right now, but whether it's a virtual concert or physical concert, in order for you to do gigs, you need to have a catalog, right? And then there are other opportunities like merchandising. There's like you could go on and on, brand engagement, right? So Maja's perspective is, let's get the best out of each artist, and then let's make it easy for them to access these opportunities, right? So, so I think fundamentally it comes down to, what can an artist control? What do they need to do before somebody external could do something for them, right?
Got it. Totally makes sense. This is very interesting, because you are doing what probably Judith did for herself, right? Is really identifying those streams. So Judith, maybe if I could have you back on, I would love to, I know you have tried so many innovative things in the last 6-7 years to find out what makes money, what makes you happy, what is in your capability to do. And I think you've made some very good decisions to make sure it's fair, not only for you, but for your team. Would you like to tell us a little bit about how you explored those things, and how you pay your team, why you decided to have a manager, not have a manager, etc.? You want to unmute, Judith?
I was muted, but yes, hello. The first thing is something that Noel already said. I think like the magic spell over my career has been that I'm a songwriter and not a performer, or like not solely a performer. And that's been really a godsend, because I've created a back catalog that sustains me. And alongside that, now I have Patreon, so I can focus on the things that I'm doing now and I have a steady income. I mean, that's the Patreon thing, right? I'm a crowd supported artist, but it's not, I don't work in big iterations of big mammoth projects. I just have a sustainable, steady income. And that combined with the publishing rights that I have kind of amassed over 20 years is, of course, putting me in a comfortable position. And but the other thing is that even publishing rights are not self-multiplying. I mean, you have to kind of be visible and be out there and tour a lot to keep your catalog in motion. And that's something that I didn't want to do anymore, because I don't want to be busy just to be busy or be seen just to be seen. And I felt that the focus was moving towards that. So I fell in love with the Patreon concept because I thought this is what I've wanted to do and be all the time. Like I want to be an artist that just works all the time and creates all the time. I don't want to spend 80% of my energy and time being Judith Holofernes and promoting that thing. And it's keeping me, I actually felt for a while that my career was keeping me from doing my work. And I was writing very little. And that has completely flipped, you know. Now I have all the time in the world. And I'm happy as a clam. I can really recommend it. But of course, there's been 20 years leading up to that, and I've made a few decisions that really helped. One of them was not spending a lot of money, which is something that when we were talking yesterday, Rat said that also. I think it's very important for artists to figure out what money means to them and what they want to do with it. Like, how do you want to live? I think for a lot of artists, their main objective would be to get to a position where they can make art freely and not worry. And that's kind of what, it's taken a long time, but that's kind of what I've created for myself. And I love it.
Judith, is that something that you worked actively towards?
Yes, I did. I wasn't always very clever about it. I mean, I tried things that didn't work. I tried being my own record company, and it was fun. It felt better. It was kind of, I was more empowered, but it was also a lot of work. And I had 2 small children, and I was touring. I had a big, like 6-person setup on stage, and it was just a lot of, I was a CEO of a too large company, you know, and I've scaled down kind of, you know, but it's working a lot better for me. And the other thing that I did is I don't have a management anymore. And just to explain, like when I listen to Noel talking about what they do for artists, that sounds brilliant. But that is something that a lot of managements, especially in Germany, cannot really deliver. A lot of them say they do, but the thing is they do the 360-degree thing without having any of the expertise. They probably have expertise for 30-degree, you know, but they do it all, but they have no idea about how the internet works, or, you know, just parts of it are very pedestrian. So my management was great. I loved them. They're very, very good. But I just noticed that I don't want to have to make money so somebody can earn enough of a percentage to justify their job. I was kind of making money to make it all make sense, which is not what I wanted to do. So now I have an assistant that I pay with my Patreon money. So there's nobody, like literally nobody except me has any interest in how much money I make, which is brilliant.
That's the dream. That's
yeah. But the thing that Noel was describing, that is something that I think would make so much sense for artists in Germany, like to have somebody who actually helps you with the things. I think an artist has to sit down and figure out what are my strengths, what are the things that I can keep doing myself, and what is not. And then you have to have somebody that you can, and I've chosen to kind of give separate jobs to separate people. I mean, I'm not doing it all myself. I'm just paying people to do it for me. And I can do that because I've kind of gotten to where I am. But I think what Noel is doing sounds brilliant.
Noel, I think she might have just suggested a business opportunity for you. Martha, once you have countrywide contest.
Yeah. I think a lot of artists could use that kind of support and really have like a bird's eye perspective on things and a modern take on what management could mean. It sounds very, very promising.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think essentially it's democratizing, as you said, right? In the industry, there is this mysterious side of how things get done, and nothing is transparent.
Yes.
So simple things are made to look like it's like climbing Mount Everest, right?
Yeah.
And it's not. And so, as you rightly said, Judith, like, I mean, there's so many things to do, and as individuals, you can't expect to be an expert in everything. And even ourselves at Maja, like, we are just facilitators, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately, if you're talking about distribution of music, or if you're talking about brand engagement, if it's just the Maja team that directly does it, we'll be limited, especially when we're trying to do this at scale. So that's why for us, it's all about building that ecosystem, building expertise across the board. And I think that we hope will, scale and truly support the artists, right? And I think one important thing that Judith brought up was that fundamentally the artist needs to find their skill set, their core sound. And specifically speaking about India, because of the nature of the film industry, when you look at a musician, you kind of get bucketized into, okay, you are either a composer or a songwriter or a vocalist.
Yeah.
Or you could be a sectionist, right? This is how the movie industry works. Now, what this means is when you're growing up, either you are aspiring to be in the movie scene, or on the other hand, if you're doing something like a classical music, again, the same idea, right? You're not really writing your own quote unquote songs, or you're not composing your stuff for the most part. So I think this is the biggest hurdle I personally have seen, is that artists don't know if I'm a singer, like, what else do I need to do to kind of round myself up, and the need for building a catalog.
Yeah.
I think, Judith is laughing now because, she has a catalog. She could do all these things, right? It's not that hard if you are committed to your craft.
Correct.
So I think, that's super important. I think if there's one thing that if anyone listening takes away from this, is that start writing or start like arranging things, just play around, right? If you are a singer, or if you are somebody who is composing things,
by that strength that you may not even know that you have, or something that you think.
Yeah. And then just like everything else, you would have your sweet spot, and then you would have some incremental ability to some of the other things, which makes you better. And in the long run now, even when you interact with others, let's say maybe you go form like a duo or a band, right? You will easily identify complementary people to work with as well.
Absolutely. I just want to bring in Rats here and Bernard as well to respond to some of the things I think Judith and Noel said, right, from the Indian context and from the German context. Bernard, Judith talked a little bit about why you don't have a Maja equivalent, right, in Germany, and perhaps that would help artists discover this idea of money in a different way, reapproach money from a different way, right? In terms of diversifying portfolio, somebody who can sort of go ahead and build that model. What do you think from your work with the Creative Business Network? Do you also hear similar things? And what do you think Is there a plan of action for something like that for artists in Germany?
Well, I think you see what Judith is just describing, this, turning learning self-management and deciding for different roles which fit better to your art is something which is, of course, strongly enabled by the digital shift away from, giving you alternatives to industry, just as Noel said. And I think this is underway almost 10 years. Patreon is not a new platform, and it's just picking up in the last years very well. And you see this in different stages in different nations. In Germany, there is a big cultural support from our national ministry since many years, and the funds are growing steadily. They spend on the COVID now almost more than 900 million in 60 different programs. And, so there is a diversity. But in Germany, you don't have a national program on this kind of new mindset of artists, because the idea here of the government in general is this is up to the sector. Yeah, this is business development within the sector. From my point of view, I believe the universities, the art academies could do more to empower artists, to do self-management. And with this, I don't mean just the economic side of management. You put it really right, choosing your model of life. This is also about scaling. Yeah, I had the same thing when I was a gallerist, to decide, do you have 2 or 3 more galleries in Peking in Spain, or do you stay with one gallery and you work for yourself, you not start working for the bank and for others. And you can be happy on a small scale as well. And so I think there is more to do. I would say in the Netherlands and in Italy, and especially also in Spain, I know more universities offering this kind of support. On the European level, there is something called European Skills Agenda, and the European Union has just starting now an agenda for skills also to empower artists. But of course, this skills agenda goes across the whole sector, across all sectors in the economy. Yeah, but there are certain programs doing this. For example, an artist and entrepreneur program financed by the European Union. There are artist entrepreneur hubs, also looking, not to just economize the artistic model, but rather use the artistic model to adapt economy to what the artist really needs. And I think this is the mind shift we are underway. Yeah.
Rats, you want to respond to that?
See, one of the things that he is time and again anchoring is the fact that, it might come across like a punch dialogue. A punch dialogue is basically something that is easy to anchor across generations. What I think he's saying is, if you want to win once, you need a goal. But if you want to win repeatedly, you need a system. And a system is what actually enables you to win repeatedly. And what he's beautifully elucidating is also a system that is available, that is accessible, that is approachable for artists. And that's what a true enabler is, And I'm also going to take what Judith and Noel are also with a lot of examples saying, and I might come across slightly rude, so I'm apologizing for that, is, we don't realize that Facebook has been around for 17 years. We're just saying Facebook is like 3 years old, 4 years old. It's been there for 17 years. Amazon has been with us for 23 years. Basically, some of us have actually gone through our childhood through Amazon. Now, if you see both Facebook and Amazon as a company, they've been different organizations at different timelines. Now, I'm going to take another relative example. If you take A.R. Rahman has been around for more time than Amazon. And he has been a different person at different timelines of his own life. You can't just bracket A.R. Rahman as a composer. I'm talking about A.R. Rahman because he is my role model. So for me, I see that being a neo-generalist, which is you need to be a jack of all trades. And you've got to understand that being a jack of all trades is just content. And if content is king or queen, then context is kingdom. So you've got to understand that you've got to adapt for the time and take advantage of what is needed in order for you to adapt so that others can adopt your way of actually going through that adaptation and also lead the path. Some of us just can't figure things out on our own. All of us need help, and courage is about asking help. So if you have an artist going to any accelerator or any music label or anywhere and they're actually asking for help, and I think they need to have the mindset that money is just a byproduct. Money is not my focus. Expanding my craft, expanding the reason of existence of my craft, which is art's job is to make human expression much more, efficient than what animals can do. That's what artists do. Humans can only be artists. So the way to do that is to understand that everything is a skill. So making money is just a skill. If you just spend enough time, not all the time, enough time, you can make what can cost your lifestyle. Ultimately, all of us are fighting to actually pay up for the cost of our lifestyle. And I think that's where Judith's example came bang on. They just didn't question their business models. They questioned their life model. It's about optimizing my lifestyle and actually making that lifestyle work. And a resource that optimizes my lifestyle is money. That's all. It's one of the resources. There are other resources. There's energy, there's time, there's relationship, there's deep work. There are all the things that actually optimizes my lifestyle. And that's what I wanted to say. So when he was saying, I was applauding because that's a system. You've got to build a system that helps you to adapt to the current context of the world.
Maybe I can just take this prompt from a policy perspective. What you are saying, I think one of the most important help programs for artists are mentoring programs, not so much funding, but having experienced artists, like-minded, knowing their craft and help you. That's what I understand is Noel doing, being a mentor on their side and not just the business partner on the other side. And that's what Judith now is able to, buy in the people she needs to help her. And this is a great freedom to do this. And I think that could be also a role of the public government to help with mentoring and coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the big things with mentoring, something that I know I get asked a lot, and Rats too, and I'm sure all of you, is how do you determine your value in a market, right? And Bernard and Rats, do you have would you like to share it with the audience? If you are an artist today, no matter if you're young or old, doesn't matter, how do you determine your value in the market? Because I think it starts from that, right? How you're going to price yourself, what kind of opportunities you're looking for, how do you think you can actually position yourself in the market, begins with the idea of how you value yourself. Because you do that incorrectly, the system, that's what you're talking about, sort of goes out for a toss. Because you and I both know, right, there are artists who think I can charge X amount of money in the market and they will not get paid for it, or they might price themselves too low and get too many things that they don't know what to say no to, and that's what happens, right? So do you both want to just talk a little bit about how do you help artists, or how can we help artists understand their value in the market?
Sure. I have a perspective, and this perspective has changed every 5 years. Because I'm learning how value creation and value consumption and value maintenance actually happens in society up close from different industries. As an artist, you're a value creator. And I think you should know what value you are creating. And I think Noel also explained that in a way, saying, what is it that you're making? What's your product? You can be multiple things, but what is it that you're actually bringing to the table? That clarity is always constantly evolving. I may bring something to the table today. I may bring something else tomorrow. I may have a different definition to success today. I will have different maturity levels, and therefore that will evolve. Yeah. So my definition of value will evolve, but one thing remains constant, which is I need to create a value chain. if I can't create a value chain, if I'm not part of a value chain, then I'm not adding value. Because I have to pass on my value to someone, or I need to consume that value, or I need to be the person at the end of the chain actually trying to do something. And are you part of the actual value chain, or are you creating the value chain, or are you in the end of the value chain, is very important. So for me, I will flip the question to, where in the value chain am I? That's more important, because the value creation process will evolve. Today I'll be selling ice creams, tomorrow I'll be selling oranges. So today I could be writing about love, and tomorrow I could be writing about freedom. Today I might actually be a composer, tomorrow I'm a lead artist who's a singer. So, but where am I in the value chain is more important.
Bernard?
Well, this is so beautifully said from Rats. I don't know really what to add. Maybe just to point to one thing. You know, you were talking of the value chain, and to use your own words, there needs to be a system on your prices. And of course, we know that the sectors are widely different. You know, the prices in architecture, at least in Germany, are regulated. Designers are not protected. Everybody can call himself a designer. So potentially there's always a pressure on prices, you know, and Adobe comes up with a new tool. Suddenly everybody can do something which a professional designer used to do. So prices are heavily in change, flipped around through technology developments as well. But if you try to look at that value chain and drive your price, raise your price, which is in the end the aim, you need to explain by what criteria your prices are rising. Even if you start, you know, with €1, you need to tell upfront, you know, and if this and this has happened, it goes to 5. And that's my experience I had also in the art market. So you need to have a price system, you have to have a transparency and explanation. And I think then you have a fair chance to raise your prices. But you have to be also realistic. Unfortunately, there is not, you know, one solution for everything. And one of the things I learned, you have to be awfully patient. I thought, you know, going to an art fair would be so easy. Prices would rise, you know. Didn't happen. Sometimes I expected nothing would happen. Suddenly, prices were rising. So have your system, stick with it, and be patient.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add something, Shreya.
Yeah, absolutely. That was you anyway, but go ahead.
Because I think this kind of intersects with the problem that we were talking about earlier, that we live in an attention economy.
Yeah.
True.
And everybody kind of buys into the narrative that attention is everything. And I think that makes artists, and likes are everything, you know, and like clicks and views are everything. And that kind of makes artists a little bit open to blackmail. So they don't charge for things because everything is kind of labeled as marketing. So you go to TV shows, you do a lot of stuff that is kind of subsumized under visibility. Everybody's like, no, but this is promoting your brand. And it's very unfocused. A lot of the time, it's just busy work. It's just like being visible for apparently no reason at all, to kind of promote your brand to random people via random channels. And I think it's really important for artists to first check, who do I really want to reach? Who do I want to talk to? And then question whether you are bringing some value to a conversation, and whether maybe you should be paid for that. I mean, I've kind of just stepped back from that, because I used to do a lot of interviews, and sometimes I would step back and be like, this is almost teaching. Like, I'm sharing a lot of things that I have learned over 20 years, and I'm just giving it away because I'm supposed to promote myself, which doesn't really feel good. It's not good for the heart, that mindset. So what I'm doing now is I question whether I can bring my skills to other places that will probably pay me for it, and I will reach exactly the right kind of people that might even end up on my Patreon, instead of like just randomly taking a megaphone and screaming myself into the void.
how often do you revisit your business model or your life model or your revenue model in your situation? Because I know you have many models. How often do you sort of look back and say, hey, I need to rethink this? Or how often do you sit and do that, or just
Yeah.
sort of let statistics speak to you and you know when something is not working?
No, it's kind of an ongoing thing. It's I have a lot of things that I've been wanting to try for years and then I didn't. But now that I'm kind of only speaking for myself and only have to answer to myself, I try them all. So
Maybe I just want to come in on Judith with one with something you said on attention and visibility, that you're also now saying no to certain things because they're kind of public education and you would rather be paid for that. And even if you go into hard-boiled economic theory, pricing is about exclusion. You have to say no. And of course, that is kind of against our mission, you know, as creators who say, okay, we want to have a big outreach and fascinate people. So there might be a built-in conflict, but I would totally agree. It's also economically reasonable to say no. But as I said, to have a careful strategy when to say no, so that people understand. And the easiest thing that this is reality is, you know, just look at a very good music club. You know, there will be a doorman, and the club is only as good as the doorman is the bad man. You know, that's it. If it's difficult to get in, high price, good thing, cool location. Yeah.
Can I add something?
I love it, Noel. I was coming to you anyways. Good.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I know Rats and Judith said a couple of great points. I just want to elaborate a bit on that. So one is this thought of valuing yourself. How do you price yourself right? So I think, as Rats said, you need to know what value you are creating. It could be, you know, evolving constantly. What is that that you're creating? And rest becomes literally supply and demand, right? So, for example, if you are building something and there's an audience for it, what your sound is, you know, there's a demand for it, then that will dictate essentially the price that you're going to be paid or what you're going to be able to do with it, versus the sound or whatever that you're producing is a bit of a commodity. Then there's going to be a bunch of options, just like, you know, when you're buying something, right? It's the concept of scarcity, there's something that's unique, right? So this is no different. So from Maja perspective, like what we, you know, this is where again, looking at across the board, like, you know, we are able to look at data and say that, okay, artists like yourself, right now, when you go to a gig, what it should be, right? So I think that's super important. And in the context of also making sure you get those opportunities is also important. Because sometimes, you know, when you look around you, maybe you don't have the monetization opportunity. Maybe the visibility is not there, right? So this is why I think it's super important to be aware of what's going on, not just locally, but nationally and globally, because, you know, as Pratt said, like Facebook has been around for 17 years. A lot of these quote unquote, you know, innovative tech companies have been around forever, and they are all great tools for artists to reach out, collaborate, find opportunities, and so on.
I want to ask you one question, and I know it might be a little bit different to what we're talking about. You talked really about democratizing the system, and I think that's what Naja is trying to do. How do you decide, though, which artists to work with? Because isn't that also a part of democratizing?
Yeah, 100%. No, 100%. You know, at one point, I want to be able to say, if you are an artist, there's something for you at Maja, right? Because I truly believe, like, when you have, even if you just take India, like over 1 billion population, you could argue that maybe there's 100 million musicians or artists of some sort, right? It's a question of where they are. So I think at Maja, our ambition is how can we elevate and enable as many of those musicians as possible. And we believe we could do that at scale because of technology, right? Now, this is where I was also commenting earlier about no two artists is the same. And it shouldn't be like, the definition of success should be determined by the artist. It shouldn't be dictated by what somebody out in the outside perceives it to be, right? So these are the things that leads to a lot of the problems in the industry. Like, Rats brought up A.R. Rahman, right? So we are fortunate to have him with us and essentially see him up close and personal, right? And one of the most amazing thing about him is, like, again, Judith said the same thing. For somebody like him, he could be out there on TV, on radio, wherever he wants. If he's chasing clout, if he's chasing that, he could be, dominating headlines like every second, right? If he wants to. But that's not what drives him. And he is still trying to reinvent himself, right? He's still searching for something better. And that's what I think makes him super special, because he hasn't lost that. Another such person is Santosh Narayanan, we talked about, I think, before. Again, see, like, these are both of them, they've done so much. They could just hang it and then, like, just enjoy life, but they're constantly trying to reinvent themselves. They are not satisfied. And this is very, very, very important. So now when you talk about democratizing it, we look at what drives these guys. What is that? They still look at themselves as day one, trying to create something. And it's essentially, we believe if we could get artists to think like that and give them the tools and knowledge to constantly reassess themselves, to be in that mindset, rest of it will take care of itself. Because what happens is, a lot of the challenges artists face is, as artists are evolving, they start acting like artists.
Yeah.
Right? Because like, I want every artist to be like A.R. Rahman, with the commitment to the craft they have, but also not mind and seek external validation, right? For yourself what success means to you. And just because, let's say, one song, we talk about this with DE and so on all the time. She's seen success, right, in multiple fronts in terms of audience reception. But she is still the same person that did that first song, right? She doesn't let these numbers get to her. She would be the first person to tell you numbers mean nothing. And that's super important, because what matters is, have you found your sound? Do you have a loyal following, whether it's one person? I mean, obviously, it cannot be your mom or dad or family, because they're going to love you and they will say great stuff. But if you could find somebody outside of the people that will, have no relationship to you but still love you,
Yeah.
and finding more of that, I think that is the key. So fundamentally, if you are able to get more and more artists to think like that, with technology, we'll be able to break down the services, right? So
Noel, I want to just bring Rats in here, because I know Rats worked with Think Music and SPIH. Now, how different was Think? Because I know you sort of represented, and this is like 15 years ago-ish, right? A long time I've seen Think Music. With artists like K, and I think Santosh Narayanan too, right?
Yeah.
How was that? Was that like different? What was that? Because that was also about spotlighting artists, helping them build their exposure, build value, right?
So when you build an organization, before you build an organization, you generally build a business, because business enables the organization to exist, and then you have to build an organization for that business to grow. That's the cycle. So when we started looking to build a business, one of the things that we were very self-aware of is that this is a game. keep your head low, shut your mouth, and do something that you can solve for a small problem. Start with one person. One person is also one. Like, there's just one video out right now, right? So you're starting with one, but start well, do well. And once that is done, now start seeing how is that problem being solved, and see where else is a problem not being solved by all the elephants and tigers in the system, and see how can you create a value for the forest that you live in. So we understood that nobody is launching a music director. Every music director is only launching singers and technicians and artists. And when I mean artists, I'm talking about instrumentalists. So if we launch a music director, now you're able to provide that music director an opportunity. That's all you're doing. But that individual can now launch another whole lot of people. So how can you create that smallest effort that can create the highest impact? And therefore, the smallest effect was, we will only pick movies where there is a new director. And this new music director should be able to stand up and say, this is me. This is what makes me unique. And I'm going to do this. And not say, what, I'm going to take Rahman's example again and say, oh, I want to make the music that Rahman made in that movie. That we'll get Rahman to do. No. Why do you need to come? If you need to come, you've got to stand up for your unique identity. And therefore, we saw that worked for us because we did it consistently. We were not looking for an overnight success. We were seeing that we want to be a launch pad to this music director. We will teach the music director how to be successful. We were only a record label, Our job was to just put the cassettes out there. Then it became CDs, and then it became music online, and then it became YouTube. We are just adapting ourselves to say, we'll put your music online. We know what it takes. You make good music. I can't make good music. I can only take it and go and sell it as Puma, Po. That's all I can do. So what you can do is to continue doing deep work. And we've seen that the music directors that we bet on, and the betting comes with an eligibility criteria, deep work, motivation, stands up for what they are unique, and they have humility, and they're never satisfied with themselves. And therefore, those became the key success criteria to select a good find. And therefore, when we make a bet, they just grow on their own. We were just an enabler. That's all. It's usually not the cup that helps you to taste a great coffee. But without the cup, you wouldn't enjoy that coffee. Therefore, we're just that cup. And that's what's really important for us to understand. That self-awareness is still there with us. We are more than 10 years old. We still continue to launch a lot of artists. We educate the artists to say, when you launch a music online today on YouTube, name your technicians. Name that person who played the flute. Name that person who actually did that. Because it might not be great for you, but that flautist's mother or father will now look at that as recognition and say, now my son and my daughter is famous. They're successful, and they will look at it as validation. And that is creating great life and moments for a lot of these people. And that's what we're still doing. But on that note, there's something that I want to talk about, which is, every age brings with it a great resource in abundance. And in today's age, technology is that resource. It's only an enabler. It's not a solution. What technology provides an artist today is democratizing their art form. And democratization here literally means accessibility, approachability, access to a marketplace, data, traceability. These are all very important to an information age. And that's what actually helps an artist grow their craft. And I agree with Judith when she says it's not the artist who's growing, it's the craft and the impact of the craft that's expanding. And you should treat technology as only an enabler of that craft and not the sole reason why you should actually build your craft. And that maturity, when it sets in when you are young, you will go places and you will build jobs for a lot of people, and the industry will grow. And as a byproduct, you will make money. So money doesn't solve the problem. You solve yourself so that money is the proof, and others start seeing that your approach is right.
Thank you for summarizing the conversation that we've had for the last 1.5 hours. No, I think that's a great way to sort of, would anybody like to respond to that, or shall we go to the next segment? Looks like we're good. Okay, cool. So I have a series of statements that I know I've heard some of you make today, some things that I've heard other artist directors make, and some things that I know I have made, right? And all I want from you, the four of you, is to answer yes or no. And this is Rat's idea, so I'm going to give him credit right now. So I'm going to ask you a question. You guys, I'm going to put out a statement. You're going to say yes or no. If I'm interested to say why you say yes or no, I might revisit it, and I want you to give a very short reply. The order I would like the responses in is Judith, Noel, Bernard, Rats. Judith, Noel, Bernard, Rats. All right? So it's a fun game. It's like a rapid fire round. Okay, cool. Should all artists have representations? Should all artists have managers?
No.
Yes.
Bernard, you're muted.
Who muted me? No.
No.
My response is yes.
Okay. Should all artists file taxes?
File?
File tax.
Taxes.
File taxes.
Well, yes, or have somebody help them.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
100% yes.
Do you think by 2030, 50% of indie musicians in your sector would have found a sustainable model to survive?
How many? How many?
50.
At least half. At least 50%.
I'm afraid not. I hope. Yes. No.
Yes. I'm going to say definitely yes.
Okay.
Same here. I go for yes.
I'm willing to make a bet that it's definitely going to be more than 50%. So yes.
Okay. Should all artists do a course on grant writing?
Contracting?
Grant writing.
Grant. Yes.
No.
No.
Not necessary.
Okay. Should artists have a digital presence and post content at least once a week on all their platforms? At least once.
On the platforms they've chosen, yes.
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 100% yes.
Do you think by 2030, in 9 years, we will have at least 5% improvement in gender representation? Which by means, let me explain that. So if let's say in your industry, there's 25% of people who identify as female. Do you think in 9 years that 25% will go to 30%?
Yes.
Definitely yes. I mean, that's very important.
Yeah, I think it will be more.
Perhaps.
Do you think by the year 2040, live events will be a rare occurrence and augmented reality or virtual reality or whatever the new thing is will be the new model?
No.
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 100% yes.
Do you think there will be another pandemic or something similar to what we've experienced in the last year in the next 10 years?
I have no idea. I mean, that's not something on my, I have no influence over that. So, hopefully no.
Yeah, I was going to say hopefully not as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, same here, but I would add, let's be prepared as if there would be one. I don't hope for it, but let's be more ready than this time.
I think the frequency is going to be high.
Just the answers, but okay.
Yes.
Do you think luck plays a big part in an artist's career?
Say again, what was the beginning?
Do you think luck plays
Luck.
a big part in an artist's career?
No.
Noel?
No. You got to create your own luck.
No.
Definitely no.
Artists should revisit their revenue model every 6 months.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, same here. Yes.
Yes. In fact, monthly would be better.
For the first 5 years of an artist's career, should they invest any earning that they make into themselves and into their business?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Artists have a retirement age in mind by the time they turn 40.
What's
Can you
the
repeat the question?
Sorry?
Should artists have a retirement age in mind when they turn 40?
No.
No. You do what you love. That's not a job.
Not with 40, maybe with 41.
No, so the retirement age doesn't need to be 40. When you're 40, you decide, okay, by 65, I'm going to retire. Is that the same answer, Bernard?
Yes, not with 40. Maybe you should do it with 41. It's just too early to think about retirement.
My answer is no. They should watch Mad Max to get a reality check.
Should artists perform for free if they have access to new audiences?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Should artists identify a mentor in the sector, either in the beginning or anytime? Should they have a mentor in the sector that they're in?
Yes.
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 Should artists have another profession or another job that earns them revenue to sustain themselves for the first 5 years of their career, in case they can't make revenue from what they're making in the arts? Should they have another job so that they can make ends meet?
It depends so much on the job. That's so hard. But I say yes.
I'm going to say 5 years is too long. Of course, when you start up, you would, but the sooner you are able to focus fully, sooner you'll be also likely to be successful.
I agree with Noel. That's it.
My answer is yes, but it's only a means. Yeah.
Should all artists have yearly goals that they should work towards?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, but everybody else too. Politicians, for example.
Yes, I agree.
And the last question, will money solve the problem?
Will?
Money solve the problem.
No.
No.
Just a little bit. No.
Definitely no.
Okay, that's good. You guys been a fantastic panel, and it's been an honor to moderate this session. Absolutely fantastic. I know we're just about the time we're going to finish, but I'm just going to take 5 minutes extra if you all don't mind, because we have some very good questions from our YouTube feed, and I want to just field a few of them. let's say, does moving towards entrepreneurship of art and artists take the focus away from their art? Anybody can answer. Go ahead.
Just a short one. It depends on if you set out to be clever about it and do smart work instead of hard work, it does free up energies for your creative work, but you have to be clever about it.
My short answer is do it only if you want to.
Okay. Judith, there's a question for you. Judith, what is the one piece of practical advice you would give to somebody starting out in the field?
Well, I get asked a lot by young artists, like, how do I go about sending a record company my stuff? And I'm like, don't, because that's just the tail wagging the dog, and focus on doing something that is great and that cannot be overlooked, and hone your art and make yourself visible and have people come to you, and also spend some time going really deep into what it is that you want and what the services are that you need from other people. And don't think like, this is how it's done, I need a record company. Maybe that's not what you need. Maybe it's something else.
Okay. Thank you. Another question is, do you think there is a way to generate revenue for artists in a particular field uniformly despite cultural bias?
I can take that. I think with technology, I think we are breaking all sort of barriers, not just cultural, but also gender. I think that's the beauty of technology. So I think some of the challenges of the past hopefully starting to disappear.
My answer is slightly tangential. There's either security or there's prosperity. There's no secured prosperity. So one must take risk and lead by example. If you see there's cultural bias, stand up for it. Lead an example. Look at the different works that people have done, and artists are the best way they can do it in an emotionally safe environment.
Okay. Thank you. That's another one. So the last question is, even though there is equivalent supply and demand for artists, why is there an inefficient market share when it comes to artists with regards to available projects, and how artists can tap this market?
Long question.
But
okay, I'll take that. I think the questionnaire, perhaps the person who's asking the question perhaps has a skewed understanding of the industry. The market is always infinite. We just don't have the intelligence to comprehend the market. I think and similarly, our ability to develop the maturity is also infinite. We are constantly evolving till the way we die. So I think maturity should meet market, and that's when business value will come.
Okay, we just have a few more questions.
Add maybe on that it's difficult to talk of the market. Markets are really separate, segregated, very individual. And in the end, you build your market. Yeah, people who call for, which are interested in your offer, and that's quite a distinct market. So this is just as Noel said. What sound do you bring to the table? That's your market.
Absolutely. Someone here says there's a fan of Marja here. Can you elaborate product in context of Marja?
What a musician puts out in terms of music. Music is ultimately what the artist is. The artist is essentially what we are built around, and what the artists make is the product.
Okay. One last question. Last. Promise. This is last. How does one make the audience or consumer more conscious of the fact that art involves money, and make them more willing to pay for art?
I can take that.
Oh yeah.
After Judith.
But I think that's mostly why I'm so in love with Patreon, is that it's very unheard of in Germany, and it opens the conversation. So it gives me a lot of opportunity to talk about the value of art and why is it that like the high arts, somebody determines the value of a painting at this and that price, but everybody's kind of okay with artists making 0.000000005 cents when somebody listens to their song. So I think there's a lot of things happening right now, and people are really open to rethinking it. And that's thanks to Corona, kind of, because it's become so visible that the way it's working now is not working for a lot of people.
Okay.
My response to that is transparency.
Yeah.
And the definition of transparency is every customer can become your fan. That's an artist's responsibility. But converting your fan into a customer can only be done by transparency. You can't just survive with fans. You have to convert them into customers. So go in search of customers and not just fans. That's when they'll pay for it.
I think white transparency is fantastic in that context, because it makes people understand. Like, I've been talking a lot to my fans and to the press about what costs how much money. Like, it costs an enormous amount of money to make an album, and you can lose tens of thousands of dollars if your tour doesn't work. Like, and people always are very, very surprised. They're like, yeah, I thought you were just like sitting in a room alone. Like, no, I'm feeding a lot of people. And there's a lot of room for education. And I think vulnerability and transparency are the way to go. Like, talk openly about your struggles and about how hard it is to make things work.
I would like to give two answers to this. One on the individual level and one on the systemic level. On the system level, you know, in the internet, the platforms gave away content for free. And the customer thought it was for free, but he was not aware he was paying with his data and with his identity for it. So just as Brad said, you know, there is a missing transparency. There is nothing for free, what you think is free. So if you would see what kind of price you pay to the platforms while you're using content for free, you would get an idea, you know, that there's always a price you pay. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't see it. And so I think here is a regulation and policy demanded to change it, to shift it. And the answer on the individual level would be, you know, talk about prices. Don't be afraid to talk the value. And if you make a price, just make it a little bit higher than expected. So the other would say, wow, that's expensive. And then you have a dialogue. And you say, okay, that's why. So don't be too cheap. You can never raise prices. You can lower them. And that prices are also, you know, a matter to start the debate.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to end. Don't be too cheap. Artists deserve to be rich. We all can figure out our different business models because we all have mentors, arts managers, institutions like Maja, institutions like the Federation of Creative Economy, and artists like Judith to sort of, you know, look up to for the success model. So, excuse me. Thank you all. Thank you, Noel, for waking up at 5 in the morning. Thanks, Rats. Thanks, Judith. A big thank you to Katerina from the Goethe Institute, as well as Geeta and Runani, who have been such a fantastic team to be working with. And I'm just so glad we could make this happen. And our deep gratitude from Dakshin Chitra for being a part of this. Please do come to Dakshin Chitra tomorrow. We have a full list of events and experiences at the venue in Dakshin Chitra Museum in Chennai. And this whole festival goes live in person tomorrow. And later in the evening, we have a beautiful Yakshagana performance, which is a traditional dance form from Karnataka, back here in the evening at the museum. So please do come, please do join, and thank you, Goethe. Thank you, everybody who's helped us put this together. Ajay, who's done all the creative work and all the posters and the design. My team, Dakshina Chitra's team, for being there and supporting this event, marketing the event. Ashik, who's been our tech support. Thank you to everybody, and hope you have a great weekend. Stay safe, wear a mask, and we'll see you very soon.